Good afternoon, everybody. Fusion Phil here, or as some of you already have now started to call me, not FeatureCAM Phil, here once again with what we're starting to call the fantastic FeatureCAM overviews. This week we are going to be covering how to do positional multi-axis inside of Autodesk FeatureCAM and how that workflow is going to be very simple but also extremely powerful when utilized on the correct parts or with the correct training. So feel free to stick around at the end of the video to see how you can get trained inside of FeatureCAM. Let's jump into it.
All right, welcome to the next video in our series. I'm going to do some 5-axis positioning on a couple parts today. So you'll see that I have a couple different parts loaded in FeatureCAM. Right now I'm doing what's called a tile view. So under the view settings, I can tile them vertically or horizontally or whatever. However, I want to look at parts if I have multiples open. In this case, I want to just go back to seeing one at a time. So I'll just go to Cascade, and when I expand one of those, that will be the file that's active. The other one's tucked in behind here. So we have multiple files open, which is really cool. So we're going to see a couple things on here. One, we need to know how we do 5-axis positioning. So in this instance, my stock is a cast piece. So in the stock properties under user defined, I've got a solid in here, and I want to use the cast one. So let's make sure we get the correct one. Okay, we'll hit OK and apply. All right, so we got a cast stock, and then we got our part. So I'm going to not have that visible here, but here's our actual part we want to machine, and then some fixturing. In order for us to be able to see the fixturing in simulation, we need to use a setting for fixturing called use solid as clamp. So I need to make sure that's active so we see it in the simulation. Okay. Also, we need to make sure we have a post. I'm going to use the Haas UMC 750 and the Mazak Variaxis as examples in here. So we'll take a look. All right. So if there's anything that I want to machine from this setup, I can go ahead and do that. Honestly, all I have on this setup are the holes. So we'll just go ahead and do the IFR like we have done in previous videos. And I'm going to say, hey, the features I'm looking for are parallel to my Z-axis or along the setup. Find all the different hole types. And in this case, you see it found all 8 of those. I'll hit select and hit finish. Okay, so it gives me the pattern and we have that. Okay, so simple as always. All right, now I want to try to find other features that are not aligned with it. But let's do this milling face right here. Maybe we want to face that off. So what I have to do is create a setup. So I'm going to create this setup. I'll just call it setup 2. We'll give it a G55 or whatever we want. You can apply a part name or anything, but I'm going to go to the 0. And instead of aligning to the stock itself, so if I had a block stock, for example, I could put it on top and in one of the corners or whatever. I want to actually use my part geometry to help me to align this. Okay, so I need to set my Z direction by picking a face, and you'll see we get a tilt right here. And now if I'm happy with that, I can leave it. If I want to change the X direction, I could rotate it once, maybe twice, and then the part would rotate this way. That's going to affect our rotation in the machine. We can also use an edge to kind of pick on. So right there, make it parallel to that. If you get 2 clicks, you align it up. Okay, and then where do I want it? Typically, I'll put it in the same spot as my original setup, but this doesn't actually matter where this is located because all you need to do is dial in the first one. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there for now, and I'll do some of the machining on this. Okay, so I'm going to do a face feature on this. So let's try it without extracting with feature rec. Okay, we'll see what the feature looks like. The setup is up too high, so I need to move the feature down from the setup. So the setup's just up higher. I didn't say it's too high, but it's up near the original setup, right? So I'm going to tell it that, and we see we have 9 millimeters. This is a metric part right here, so we can see that number right here. So if I copy this, if it doesn't automatically populate, I can paste that in there. That's the thickness we got to deal with. And now we know we probably want to rough that and finish it. Okay, so I'm going to let it go ahead and pick a face mill and do that. All right, let's go ahead and get maybe this pocket down here, or slot or whatever. So if I go into the new feature wizard and choose slot and use feature rec, let's see if I can pick a slot from here. That is one of the supported ones, right? So I'm going to pick these two walls right here. Ignore the fact that I got all that other stuff. It won't matter. It's only going to take the two faces. And then it will give me either an error saying, hey, I can't find it, or something, right? So it's really small, but we could do that as a pocket maybe, right? So we could go pocket, do automatic, see it found it, hit finish. So most of the time slots will work, but occasionally you get one like that where it doesn't. So it's got a total depth here. I can modify it, put a chamfer on here if I wanted to, or anything, even though it's not modeled, but we get to see the features. So let's go ahead and do the holes next. So what I'm going to do now is do the holes, and I'm going to do anything that is not parallel to Z. So I could either specify a specific vector. In this case, I have setup 2 active. Okay, and so if I try to say along the setup Z, you're going to see that it found those because my setup is on the angle, right? So I could take those, get those, and be done. And then I could go back in and do another feature. And let's see if I can get like this one over here, right? So I'm going to say, hey, along a specific vector, and I'm going to just tell it, instead of giving it a specific alignment, which I absolutely can using the pick 2 points option, I can just say recognize all holes, and it will find any holes that are not parallel to my active setup. So you see these ones we already did with the other setup. You see this one here as well, right? So I'll just take that one and hit finish. So you can see it's really easy to kind of see what's going on. So let's see how this drilled. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that we were coming from the right direction. So I just did a preview. And the reason I did that is because in 5-axis, you can flip it, reverse the direction if you want. This would come from the inside now. Just show you the preview. And obviously that's not what we want, right? So I just wanted to show you that control right there. So I just verified it with a preview. You know, pretty simple, right? So now if I want to do the engraving, I have this curve right here. So you'll see I have a curve right here named engrave. Okay. And so when you do engraving, we do what's called a groove feature. And the curve just happens to be named engrave. When you first see this, it'll throw you off. Don't worry about it. We got to get the depth and the width right. Right now we're worried about Z location. The curve is right where I want the top of the engraving to start. And now I'll just give it a width of like, 10 thou, which is like 0.254 millimeters, right? Same thing on the depth. Hit preview, and you'll see that looks better, okay? So I created that curve using the curve wizard. Maybe we'll do a video on that at some point. And so what you're going to see now, it's looking for a tool that's 0.254 wide. I likely don't have one in my tool crib, right? And honestly, I'm not going to use like a flat end mill or something. I might use one of the spot or center drills, like a 90-degree spot drill, for example. Maybe I'll take that, hit apply, and we'll just watch the little bit of engraving here. And we see how we were able to get that pretty easy with the setup aligned to that, right? So the last thing we would do would be this pocket, then we'll switch over to the other part, and I'm going to show you an even easier way to do these. So what I need is to align this to here. So if I say pocket, you'll notice that I forgot to create a setup. Okay, so I do need a setup. Holes you can do with just one setup and get all the holes if you want, or you can split them up into a couple setups like I did. But any of the other features, you need a setup. And you can see I don't have one aligned to this. I just have setup 1 that is there and setup 2 here. I need one to this, and I forgot. Well, the cool thing is you got this create a setup on the fly. So this will be setup 3, and I will do the same thing and align to part geometry. And then I'm going to pick the Z and make it perpendicular. The end of the tool will be perpendicular to that. And then I can kind of see it. Look at my X, so it would rotate this way. I might want to rotate it around. So maybe I'll rotate that twice. Now my X is going this way. When I hit OK and go to the top view, you'll kind of see how the part will flip based on the orientation I have. Now I can just make my pocket, right? So pocket, extract with feature rec, automatic. Okay. Now when they have chamfers, this won't include those. So what you want to do instead is use like one of these methods. Okay. And then you want to set the top here, and the bottom will be good. And then if you don't know the chamfer, if you can find a seam, like I can see one right in here, I can snap here to here, and it will pull that chamfer for me and make the chamfer on the part. Okay, so pretty simple to do that. Let's go ahead and just machine simulate this real quick. I have this on the Mazak Vari-axis, so I'm going to go to machine simulation so you can see this. I always single step my machine simulation so that I can make sure that I get a good view. So this is kind of a generic view of what a Vari-axis would look like. Okay, and we'll go ahead and watch this. You'll see that the part is down in the table, all right? So I've got to get something set up properly. So I'm going to go to the front view in setup 1. And I basically need to know from this setup where the bottom of this is. So I'm going to do an interrogation with setup 1 active, right? And I'm going to say, give me the location in Z from my setup, and pick on the bottom of the model right here. And I'm going to take that number and copy it. And you only have to do this in setup 1. I'm going to go to setup 1 right here. And I'm going to, on the simulation page, basically say from my setup, the bottom of my fixturing is that far. So that puts it flush on the table. So now you'll see when I go to single step this and load the machine that we're sitting on the table properly. Okay, now we'll check the simulation. We got some gouges. We need to get a smaller tool, right? Pretty standard. So it's trying to pick something that fits there. And then remember, we had a cast part, so we didn't actually have to face that off, but I did show you how to do it if it was. So we need to go fix our issues, right? So first off, let's turn on the gouge checking. So in the simulation settings, I'm going to make sure we pause on gouge and show the pause on gouge. And then I'm going to get my results window out here, and we're going to watch this simulation, and I'll see right away where my gouge is, and you can see the arrow just as a reminder from the first milling video I did, right? It's here. So maybe I'll change all these center drills to something smaller, right? So I'm going to double click on that. I'll just pick a number 2. Okay, they all update because they're part of a pattern. You can see I got a center drill number 3, and then I have a spot drill in hole 4. So it's picked some other tools. Maybe I just want to use that for all of these. So I'll just highlight this. Actually, let me highlight all the operations I want to change. Okay, so I want to change that. I want to do that. And I did the groove feature for the engraving. I could even change that to this if I wanted. I think I'll just leave that one alone. Now I have to have one of these that's up above. I have to select it so that it knows I want to change to this tool on these operations. So I do the right click like I showed in the first video that I did. And we hit override and they all change. So we'll run it through machine simulation again, see if we have any issues, whether I have any collisions. We'll see the rotation happening. There's the facing. It's not really cutting anything. Like I said, we didn't really have to face that. Okay, now we see something where we've rotated and we've hit. So this fixturing isn't going to work, or we need a longer tool or something, right? So you can see that FeatureCAM's showing you the collision. So I need to get a longer holder or something, right? Or a taller fixture or some scenario there. Okay. So again, if we watch it, if you pay attention to the operation list, I'll just run through it again just so you can kind of see it. See the simulation, we get going through here. And as soon as we have the problem, I'll know where it is. Okay, now I want you to see how that tool tilted away, like the table tilted a specific direction. Okay, that's hole 4, this center drill tool in hole 4. Okay, so it tilted the tool away. What I want to do is maybe have it tilt the other way and bring the trunnion, swing the trunnion the opposite way. So now that I know where I have a problem, I can do that first and then we can see things better. So you can do this at a couple different levels. So this particular operation, you'll see that on the drilling tab, I have something called 5-axis positioning. Now there are a few options in here. Training, we would cover all of them, but basically I want it to do the opposite or alternate position what it just did. Okay, so we know that's going to be right here. I'll go ahead and put a breakpoint right here in the simulation like I have in previous videos, just because I want to pause it there. Maybe I'll speed that up just a little bit. Okay, well now let's see what happens when we get to this position. Okay, now I've got the pause. Now you notice how the trunnion swung away from me and the parts on the side where I can see it. Now I'm still likely to have the collision, right? I need to get the longer holder or whatever. But the great thing about the machine simulation and all that is you get to see the collisions, right? So let's just try another machine just for the heck of it, because I have one. Let's go ahead and machine simulate this. So I'll single step again to load it. So this is like a kind of a stripped down version of a UMC 750 from Haas, right? So we'll run this through, see if we have the same problem. Okay, so this one, I've got an over travel. So on this particular one, this machine only swings so many degrees one way and swings a lot more the other way. So in this instance, I might want to do alternate positioning on this right here, right? So I'll highlight that, hit eject, and I'm going to do that here. And I'm going to go to alternate right here. Now I know that I'm going to need to do that to both operations. So I need to do that also in the other setup here. I had this spot drill. Hole 4, right? So in hole 4, I only did the spot drill. I also need to do that with the drill, right? So we're going to find out. So we're going to run through. Now you can do it operation by operation, or you can even just go into a setup and say, hey, the entire setup, I want you to go another way. So we got some sort of travel limits we're hitting, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and just say, hey, don't pause on those. You can kind of see them, what's going on, right? So the facing, I might need to change the angle that it was doing. Instead of an x-axis, maybe we do a y-axis, right? Here's that same collision we had again, so we need the longer holder. Just for giggles, I'll show you where you do that. So on the tool itself, in the tool properties, you can go add your holders or any other holders that you might have. So maybe I've got this, really long one. Hopefully it's skinny enough. So this is just one of the ones I've added to the software over time. Okay, we'll see if we have that. You can see immediately that we've got that applied it to everywhere that tool is being used, because we did change the holder for that tool. See if we get the collision. So here's that pause. Yep, and so still not long enough, right? All right, so I think you get the idea. All right, so let's move over to this other part. Okay, so I want to look at this one. All right, so there's a faster way to kind of do things. So if I were to run AFR on this solid, so I've got my part right here, and run it, I only have the one setup currently. Okay, now I can face it, which I do want. I could do a side feature. This is also from a casted part. We're just doing the pockets, the holes. We're not cutting the whole perimeter, but you see how it would break it up and do it. So I'm just going to keep the face. I don't really like the other ones I got on this one. Okay, so we'll just face it ourselves. We'll face it. I won't use any feature rec. I'll just face it. So now if we look here, my setup is up above. Usually I'll put it on the model, but if you don't, you need to move the feature down, right? So it's down, there's your 10th thou and 1/10. There's the thickness will be, that, right? And we're just going to do a finish pass. So we didn't even really have to put anything in there. We just want a finish pass. Okay, so FeatureCAM will pick a tool and do its thing. All right, now I got this cool add-in that we can make available. It's actually installed with the software, and it's an add-in right here, and it's called 5-axis IFR. There's actually 2 5-axis ones in here. So if I go to Manage and go to the library and type 5-axis, just start typing it. It filters this window. The one with the green check mark is the one I have loaded. So there's 2 options here that the developers made for making these things easy. Okay, so if I wanted just to make the setup, I could create that by selecting a plane, or like the bottom of a pocket, for example. You'll see here in a minute, and it will just make the setup. But this one, I maybe want it to go ahead and create the features too, run IFR. So I've got it loaded. It will put a plus sign when you do that. And then when you hit OK, it'll make it a green checkbox. When you come back in, you'll see the green checkbox. I already got it loaded. It's right here. So there's a lot of add-ins in here that come with the software. So what you do is you basically pick the flats that you want. So I want to basically machine these out. Okay, so I'm going to run this add-in. And you'll see that whatever the name of the face is, so if I click here, if I look at the very, very bottom of the software down here in the lower left, you'll see face 657. Well, that's the setup for there. There's the setup for wherever 630 is. 637. Looks like that's over here. And we don't have to worry about necessarily the location of them, but we might want to rotate them or whatever. So we need to just watch them in simulation, right? Okay, now it won't do like cylinders like this, so you would want to do the holes. But I could, maybe I want to just drill through these 2 sides and go all the way through. I could do the 5-axis, and you'll see that we get a bunch of features. Now that's a bunch of stuff down here. So my fixturing is being shown. So it's actually milling features on that. So let me hit undo on a couple of these. And pocket 1, 2, 3, and 4. That should be where I'm at. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the mount and the fixturing out of the graphics window. And I'm going to do that again. I'll select these 2 and run the 5-axis. And you'll see that I only had to pick the one because they're planar, right? So it gave me one setup. So maybe I want to do one from this side and the other one from this side. I can do, create the setup. Now I have 2 setups to work with, and I can finish creating the features. So we'll just go in here. Maybe I want to do those as holes. I actually do not know what size these are. So let's do a curvature check. 337. Something like that. So we'll just do a hole, see if it will find them. So I'm going to say along the setup Z, and it didn't find them. I think these are tapered is why, right? So that's actually why they didn't find them. So if we check that curvature again, if you look at the bottom here, axis 2 is showing, yeah, that axis is changing. So it's tapered, and that's why the 5-axis make IFR didn't find it, because it's not a 2D feature, right? So we could surface mill those and go on. Anyway, let's go ahead and finish this video up. Let's go look at the machine sim for all this. Just as a reminder, we want to check the for any gouges. I do have the limit thing turned off, but there's our facing. And we rotate, and I have another collision, and it tells me that we're hitting here, so we got to get longer tooling or taller fixtures, right? And then just as a reminder, you can go to any operation, whether it's just a single operation in a feature, and change the positioning rule. You can change it here. You can even go in a setup. So if you had like a setup that had multiple features and you wanted them all to do that, you could change the entire setup to this one of these other options. I'm not going to get into the other ones in this video. You can also go in for the document itself and find in here milling for this entire file. You could change the entire file to do alternate. And then, of course, configurations that we talked about in the very first videos. Those are defaults. If you find that you need to alternate or something is your answer, you would set up your configuration. So when you start a new file, you're good to go, right? So we'll go ahead and just finish this by running this through. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the gouge checking here in a sec as soon as it pops up. But you can see how simple it is to program these things in FeatureCAM. And if you do have the gouge checking on, the pink will show that there's gouging. Well, that's cutting. Obviously, we're hitting the table, right? Okay, so hopefully this helps you see the capabilities the software has in 5-axis, and we'll be making surface milling and 5-axis simultaneous in the next couple videos, because 5-axis simultaneous is surface milling with 5-axis controls. Okay, so that's the end of this one. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, that wraps up yet again what we're calling the fantastic FeatureCAM overviews. So with that, we always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And if any of you want to know who actually does the recording behind these videos, feel free to reach out to us with the email down below, as they would love to show you why they know and how much they know about FeatureCAM and get you trained up today. So as always, guys, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.